York Times and USA Today best-selling author L.A. Banks has penned over 40 novels and 12 novellas in a wide range of genres, and is a recipient of the 2009 Romantic Times Book Lovers Convention Career Achievement Award for Paranormal Fiction, and the 2008 Essence Magazine Storyteller of the Year Award, as well as the 2008 Best 50 Women in Business Award for the state of Pennsylvania. Because you can't just be an artist. You got to learn to be a business person too. So remember that. A native of Philadelphia, she writes under the pseudonyms L.A. Banks, Leslie Easdale, Leslie E. Banks, Leslie Banks, and Leslie Easdale Banks in genres as diverse as romance, women's fiction, crime suspense, and paranormal. Can we say overachiever? She sets a bar so high, it's hard to even get close to it. She has contributed to magazines, newspaper columns, and has written commercial fiction and nonfiction for a variety of major publishers. Currently, Leslie writes full-time, is a member of the Liars Club, and is always working on multiple projects and anthologies simultaneously. She resides in Philadelphia with her daughter, who attends her graduate studies alma mater, Temple University. I would like you to welcome the indomitable, the inimitable, and the ever-lovely Leslie Banks.
Oh man, good evening. Terence is crazy. Well, thank you so much for coming out this evening. This is a great, fellowship of writers and readers and, artists over here, people who are fantastic. I have to give a shout out to N. Stephen Harris, who is a phenomenal comic artist. Oh my goodness. Give his brother some love. This area of science fiction, paranormal, supernatural, whatever, it's been called many, many things, is a fabulous playground for us to play in as African American writers, because, you get to put it all together like a gumbo. You get to say, all right, yes, there's science fiction, and yes, there's these belief systems, but, in our culture, we have such a rich heritage of things. Oh, I'm talking with my hands, so you have to. I'm not used to doing cameras and microphones. I'm used to walking the floors, and, we have so much rich cultural heritage to add in that a lot of us have lived supernatural, like the auntie that dreams of fish, and that's normal. And that means somebody's pregnant. And that's like, you take that as gospel. And what? That's not fantasy. That's real. That's the kind of thing that can make every woman in our family run out and get a pregnancy test. Or, if something goes bad, somebody had a dream about something, or they get a bad vibe, it was nothing to see the old aunties go around and anoint up the windows. Oh no, I got something for the devil is a liar. We'll throw a little salt in the corners and sweep it out. All that kind of stuff got lost in the more traditional vampire tales. And that's where I really, I had fun. It didn't start off as a series, what I was doing. The other thing that was really, really fun is, adding in the what ifs. All right, you have a vampire tale, but what if there's some old lady in the swamp that works roots? Or, the lady who has visions around the corner that everybody goes to see, and you gotta, because I remember one of my earliest memories as a kid about this whole other world that just lives side by side in the modern day was being on a bus with my grandmother, and a lady had a bag that kept jumping up and down. And I'm like, Grandma, she was like, mind your business. That's grown folks' business. Well, I'm sitting there as a 4 or 5-year-old kid, just riveted to this bag, and the bag would move and shift and jump. A lady had a chicken in a bag, okay? And she was on the bus, and she was going to go handle some things. You see what I mean? So, and my grandmother had a superstition that you don't look at that chicken. That's a sacrificial chicken. You don't look at the bag. And she kept turning my face away from the bag. So there's just so much stuff that we have in the community and that can be blended in, and that's where, I just, kind of lost my mind, and I had a good fortune of stumbling into St. Martin's Press when I did. Terence is absolutely right, because they let me just, be outrageous and put stuff in there that, one would normally get to put in the work. I didn't have to follow the norm. I could just go way off the beaten trail. Now, just before I do this reading, I just want to say the trail has gotten windy. It started off 1 book, 2 books. Next thing you know, we're up to 4, and now the series ended at 12 books. But it was really because of reader demand that we're going into, we're going into some more things. I thought, I don't know if I have enough for another novel about the main characters, but their children. That's another story. And really what kind of led me to it is I kept getting parents saying, I want to introduce my kids to this series. But anybody that has young people in here, this ain't the series. Don't do it. I need an NC-17 rating, like book 1 or 2. Okay, the 3rd book, I'm telling you right now, for those, cut it off for 3. Don't do it. Right. So because I had that warning on there, I thought, okay, maybe I can come up with something that's, young adult, teens and tweens and that kind of a thing. And as I looked around my own household, I'm the Kool-Aid mom in the neighborhood, right? So all the young people are in my house. I thought, I could really do this. Because all the texting and the drama, and I call it conflama, the confusion and live drama, they got it going on. I'm like, oh yeah, I could do this. Because usually I'm the one that gets pulled into the kitchen by, my daughter's like, my girlfriend has to ask you a question. She can't ask her mother. I'm like, oh no, don't put me in the middle of this. I don't want to know. La 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 la. Because now I have to be the harbinger of the secret, and I can't, betray the trust. Oh, anyway, the things that I have heard from the teenagers blew my hair back and made it turn white. Marlene, I had nothing on me. I'd have heard some stuff. This is just color in here. But so then I thought I could really do this. And so I'm going to do a series on the kids. I had little episodic things. Yeah, that'll come out in April, one way or another. Because, we had some philosophical differences. They finally caught up to me and saw what I was really writing. So I had to go off on my own and do some things. But that's okay. So that's going to come out in April. And then Terence put up this lovely art. The comic books are out now. So that was, thank you. So little by little, this thing that was small just started going like this and mushrooming. And it's really because there was the readers that, proved that there is demand. And I look at it like this because when Terence and I, became acquainted, and Linda, and, all the great writers, and even back when Sheree, we were like kicking doors in, trying to get them to accept black vampires. And I'm like, it was like 30 years ago that there was Blacula. When I saw, which was beautiful, by the way, that you did. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, and he turned the maggots into ant. Oh man, and I remember that that was like really cool back in the day, and we really haven't seen it in its full bloom, just as a genre of writing. So to be able to play in this sandbox is a lot of fun. Whichever take, we've heard a lot of different takes on the whole vampire theme, from historical to the humorous, and Linda didn't really bring hers out tonight, but she's got some stuff, and I think that that's the whole issue, is that we're diverse. We're not a monolithic group, so we're going to have different perspectives, and we should all be able to, there's room for us to all to play in this. So anyway, It's always hard to figure out what to read when you have like a series like that. And there's always somebody that's not quite all the way through the series, and they go, "No, I didn't want to know," you know. So, forgive me for reading the prologue of the first book, because that's the safest place to be. Okay, because they're all like building block books that hinge on the next one. And if I go in the middle of like book 2 or 3 or whatever, somebody's going to invariably be upset. So I think that's the best way to do this. And it's just a short read, but one of the other things I like to play with, very important point I need to make. Science fiction, and in fiction in general, but science fiction in particular, fantasy and horror / supernatural, that is an area that you can do vast political and social statements. You can put so much in here that nobody can argue with you about. And in times where you're, when artists are under siege, they hide things that are truth in fiction. You know, go back to the era of Dickens. Now, they would have, put that man in the stocks. Seriously, they would have, maybe lit him on fire in the town square as a heretic for going against child labor laws, you know, or, going against the lack of child labor laws, right? Or, you know, tales like, you know, the Little Match Girl. This is a sad tale of a kid that's homeless that really dies in the cold in the streets of London. Oh my God, or the streets of France, I can't remember. But the point is that it's horrible, and it's a social commentary. Well, the thing that I so enjoyed about being able to do this series, I could put Halliburton in there, Dick Cheney, I could put them all in there. I could just be as out and ridiculous and just disguise them up a little bit and give them some fangs, but I could really they were a bunch of old dudes, you know, running the world without a conscience, you know. So, and it was a vampire council. Clearly, table blood, black blood, oil, hello. You know, there was a lot of metaphor in there that you can hide in your work. And it took them 12 books before they caught up to me. So I'm like, yes. So anyway, with that said, this is set in New Orleans 20 years ago, and it is the framing for the whole legend. And it's the slayers or the huntress's parents. And the wife thinks something is going on that is not going on. It's like what she sees, like her logical mind can only grab onto what she sees outwardly, which is also another nod to everything that seems to be one thing could be something else. And also, she's about to make a really bad decision based on what she sees, which is going to land her in worse trouble. But anyway, the child that's screaming is Damali. The child that's screaming is the huntress, because the kid back then, and this is the other thing too, we don't really give children credit for knowing things. The child sees and knows what the parent can't. You know, ever see the movies where the dog is growling and everybody's like, "Boy, what's the matter?" The dog is growling, be out! You know, I don't know. I'm just if everything is running in this direction, why are you going in that direction? I don't know. But anyway, I guess I'm just a city girl at heart, you know. But anyway, this woman, the green-eyed monster gets a hold of her. And this is why she does things that are very foolish in this early prologue. Okay. Sarah Richards stood in the middle of her bedroom trying to console her infant who was wailing at the top of her tiny lungs. Yes, she knew what pain was and wanted to cry out as much as her baby girl was carrying on right now. Instead, silent tears slid down the sides of her face as she turned her chin up to the ceiling and shut her eyes. How, Lord, was a preacher's wife supposed to deal with the fact that her husband was having an affair? For months she had denied the obvious, but now her husband's lies regarding his whereabouts had been found out. He'd even violated the sanctity of their home by bringing this woman to their bed, their marital bed. Evidence in the form of the marriage violator's perfume and blood still clung to the sheets. She'd only been gone an hour on a church errand her husband had contrived for her to do. 1 hour? And now this? Sarah covered her mouth and turned away, hastening from the sight of the stench and filth, taking her baby girl to lay her in her crib. With her hands trembling, she left the screaming infant, whose wails intensified as she turned away from her. Shame burned through Sarah. How could she call the church elders or talk to Mother Stone about something like this? How did a preacher's wife, the first lady of the church, force her lips to say that her husband, the Reverend Richards, had lost his natural black mind? Amid the now hiccuping cries from the nursery, Sarah became very still as she heard movement in the small clapperwood house below her. There were two voices, one soft, seductive. The other was that of her husband. He'd brought this whore back to his home again? Once was not enough. Did he think she was so foolish as to run another church errand at night again so he could get away with doing God knows what? Couldn't he hear his own child screaming her lungs out? And wouldn't he know that his wife was upstairs? Did he have so little respect for her? Or was it that this whore's pull was that strong? Tears of bitter rage and hurt stung Sarah's eyes, the pain of her acknowledgement almost crushing her ribcage as the muscles around her heart constricted. This woman, this transgressor, had a hold on her husband that not even the Lord could seem to break, because Father God knew she preyed on it from the first inkling of doubt. Now her husband had brought a violator back to his house, her house, correction, her house. A home designed for a minister, his wife and children, across the street from hallowed ground. Yeah, okay. Sarah felt her knees begin to buckle as she envisioned the faces of loyal parishioners who hung on the good Reverend's every word, just as she once had. This house was not a home, nor was it a place where she or her child could find peace. She resisted her first instinct, which was to barrel downstairs to confront her husband and the heifer that had crossed her threshold, but something slithered inside Sarah's soul and gave her pause. The green-eyed monster raised its ugly head. She had to know what this hussy looked like. Who was this woman that could break up hearth and home using something that all women had? She wanted to spy and to know the things her husband said to this home wrecker. What lies had Armand Richards told? Silently, like a thief in the night, Sarah Richards crept down the hall, hugging the wall. She knew the house by heart and easily avoided the creaky floorboards. Stretching her body, she clung to the very paint as she peered around the corner of the landing. The baby's cries escalated, her pulse rising along with it. She held her breath as she rounded the corner and froze. A tall, handsome male, the color of cafe au lait and dressed in an impeccable black suit, ran a palm across her husband's jaw. The caress was sensuality personified. The sight stole a scream from Sarah's lungs as her husband closed his eyes, dropped his head back in a display of sheer feminine submission. Sarah took the stairs one by one, clutching the handrail to keep from passing out. She couldn't breathe as she watched in abject horror while this man, a man, not a woman, embraced her husband like a lover and lowered his head to Armand's exposed throat. When she heard her husband groan, something fragile within her snapped. Everything became a blur. Her feet flew down the stairs. Her screams outstripped her infant daughters. The words became a chant. God, no, not that. She would crucify this beast, this fowler of her household. There was no rational thought as she hurled herself forward, trying to grab hold of his broad shoulders. She wanted blood, a pound of flesh, but the agile intruder simply swept her husband up in his arms as though he was sweeping away his bride and deftly slipped through the door with him. Sarah gave chase into the front yard, screaming, crying, hollering behind them, but only the night heard her. She spun in a crazed circle, searching the darkness for them. Where had this lover taken her husband, and so quickly? Sarah fell to her knees in the gravel driveway, stones cutting through her nightgown and pierced her knees. Bloodied, she lay outstretched, sobbing a futile prayer. It was a man. It was a man, Jesus in heaven. No, a man gorgeous with jet black penetrating eyes, a regal carriage, flawless skin, thick black lashes, onyx curls that would shame any woman. A man, please no. A man that stood 6'2", with a solid frame and strong enough to lift her husband as if Armand was a baby. No. She heaved and vomited, wiped her mouth, and clawed the dirt until she could push herself upright. She stared up at the sky and then at the lit window of her daughter's room. Sarah walked slowly back to the house and reached for the telephone. The church matriarch should send her daughter Marlene to look after the baby tonight, she thought. Marlene was good with infants. She was a nice young woman. Right now, Sarah Richards had an errand to run, one that she'd put off for all these months. She needed something more than prayer. Her husband was with a man, and the church elders didn't know nothing about pain like that. The old lady who lived on the edge of the swamps had potions and such, and what Sarah would tell her would stay between her and the old witch. That's it. Thank you. All right.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. I think that Leslie said it. We're in a new age where we can do things that we never were able to do before. And the joy of writing fantasy is that people don't see the reality in it. And that makes it an special joy when you want to write things about the world that there is no other way to say. So we live in a new age. I think that it's a scary time. I think it's hard to write scary stories in such a scary time, but I think the more they reflect what actually does scare us. Cheney with fangs explains all those heart operations. It becomes a less frightening world, and I think that's our job. I often say that horror stories are an inoculation against real world fear. That if you get little doses of fear in a controlled form with a resolution, you can go back into the reality that scares you and find solutions of your own. So, we are going to take some pictures. Damn, yes. I want pictures. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Amy. And most of all, thank you, ladies, for joining me. It's been a delight. So, thank you. Thank you.